I've been out walking over the past week and I have seen 5 foxes. I do not know what's in the air. Well, guess it's spring. Earlier this year, Kerry Newell, who's a fellow YouTuber, and I thought it would be really interesting to paint the same subject in the same medium, but in our own styles. So after a lot of discussion, we agreed on a fox. Well, fast forward, this is what Kerry has painted, and it's in pure and classic watercolour. Hop over to her channel and see the full tutorial. And then this is what I painted in very impure and very unclassic watercolour. Oh, with ink as well. So why not watch this one, watch Kerry's, grab a few ideas of both and paint your own. We'd love to see what you do. So please like the videos, share your work and hopefully subscribe to both of us. So join me today and I'll show you from selecting the reference photo through to those final splodges how I painted Mr. Foxy Loxy. Unless you're a really good photographer, you're going to have to rely on other people's photos for reference material. And I really like Pixabay for royalty-free references because I don't want to infringe anyone's copyright. So it's free to sign up. And I searched for fox and then saved everything that I really liked that caught my eye into a collection. It's really useful for later on. I always seem to end up painting profiles, so this time I thought I'd challenge myself and do a full head-on one. But the only one that really caught my eye was this picture of half a fox, and I wanted that full fox. So I downloaded it, which again is really easy to do in high definition. And then I used Canva, which is free as well, to duplicate it and flip it over and put the two halves together to make my complete fox. I mean, it sounds complicated, but it hardly took any time at all. And ta-da! I have my complete fox. I'll put this photo in the post section of this YouTube channel so you can use it if you want to. This is my prepared board, which has got 3 layers of watercolour ground on it, and it's been sanded off. And I start, here's my reference, by sketching using a watercolour pencil my underdrawing. I personally don't go for a very detailed drawing because I want to give myself space to express myself and to follow where the paint leads me. The sort of things I look for to help me is verticals. So say the inside corner of the eye pretty much starts where the ear is. We might look at where the edge of the nose is, and that's sort of pretty much where the pupils are, so that's useful. You might do some measurements, so say the width of the eyes is roughly from to the end of the nose. Now with experience you kind of do this mentally, but as you're starting out, draw lines, actually do the measurement. That quite like looking for angles. So again, say this line is quite nice. So sussing those and incorporating them is fun. Now you and I know that this reference came from being reversed and put together. So I am going to make an effort to make each side slightly different, because nothing in life is truly symmetrical. Our faces aren't symmetrical, and I'm fairly sure a fox's face isn't symmetrical either. I'm holding my pencil further up than I might normally so I can get a nice loose expressive line and make sure that I'm happy with how it's coming on. I usually mark in where the highlights are because I really want to save those, and I don't mask, but I just want to remember where they are. I think the eyes need to come down. And what I would urge you to do is when you've finished your drawing, go away, go and make a cup of tea, a coffee, do a job, whatever you need to do, and come back even in 10 minutes with fresh eyes that will then see things clearly. Having listened to my own advice for once, look, I've got a cup of tea, and I came back and just had a bit of a fiddle around with the nose area and took the size of the eyes down. Now I am going to start by using a pen to map in the eye. And you might think, oh, well, that's going to really show up and look a bit weird. Why is she doing that? But the wonderful thing, grab a small paintbrush, about this surface is that pens that would on paper just be instantly permanent carry on moving a little if you add a bit of water to them, and we can start to develop a bit of tone but be pretty accurate with our lines because we're using a pen. Once it dries, it'll be in place, but just if you're quick enough, then you should be able to move it on the surface. And even putting that in just brings our lovely fox to life. And now here I've got a little Indian ink, and I can pop it into the wet area, and look how it moves on the surface and gives me this beautiful painterly furry mark. I love to start with the eye simply because if I muck up the eyes, then I've mucked up the whole painting and I might as well stop and start again. When you're doing a head-on view like this, one eye needs to be slightly more dominant than the other, because if they are absolutely identical, we feel a bit cross-eyed looking at it. We don't know where we should look first. Now, I'm not sure which side I want to be more dominant, so I may let the watercolour dictate it for me, or the ink dictate it for me, and see which one decides it's going to win this particular race. If you get too much ink on the surface, and you really only need a tiny bit of ink because it is very pigmented, just use a piece of kitchen towel and take that off and blend edges. And we do want a mix of soft edges, hard edges, things that are defined, things that are a bit fuzzy, just to make it as interesting as possible. We're just thinking tonally, where are the lights and darks? Yeah, I'll do the same with the nostrils, get quite a dense area of black in, but then use the water and leave little highlights, because often around the nostrils there are highlights which sort of shows the structure. Say the top of the nose has got a lovely highlight on it. We know it's black, but it's in the light, so it almost looks blue. So let's make sure we leave that. So I've just wet that, clean water, and then if I put some ink in there, it'll spread and make a nice soft mark for me. Probably using too small a brush, but I'm enjoying how it's working for me. I'm not going to bother. Up here, let's get some interesting marks in. So I wet that and then just flicked a little bit of ink in, and I think that just makes for some interesting marks. The secret is to leave it alone once you've done it, even though you will be very tempted to give it a poke. Just wetting the fur area under the chin and up into its cheeks where there's quite a definite shadow. Now he's got a white tummy, but it's in real shadow, so I'm putting in some quite gutsy sort of darks. I did almost say gutsy darks, but I meant gutsy darks. Now what I love is just sprinkling a little salt into ink washes to again make some interesting marks. You need to do it while it's still wet enough to move. So that is probably too dry. That should be okay. And again, leave well alone. So I've wet the ear and then I'm going to let it sort of paint itself as much as possible. Let's do the other ear. So just the same thing. Remember, we're not trying to get both sides identical. We are trying to make sure this looks like a plausible living creature. Again, while this is wet, maybe a little salt to even break that pigment up further. Hopefully this is still wet enough that I can put a soft mark under there, emphasize the mouth area a bit more. I think a little more texture on his tummy. Don't worry if some of those dots go elsewhere, because he is, you know, there are marks everywhere all over his coat. Just going to put a little bit more shaping around here and then leave him to dry so we can come back, crisp things up, or indeed calm things down. This is pretty much dried and I've taken off any salt, and now I'm going back in with that pen to start to crisp things up. So I definitely want to really darken the markings around the eye. You could of course do this with a fine brush in your ink, but say I just find the pen's quite convenient. If it was on paper I wouldn't use this because it would be too harsh, but I know I can just smooth things off and blend things out whilst being in control. Another nice thing you can do is make some sort of little directional marks and then again just blend them before they fully dry. You tend to see detail at the end of, or the edges of dark areas, don't you? So you might sort of see that fur texture here at the edge. We can just sort of blend that down. This ink layer is effectively a tonal painting, and then the watercolour won't have to do much work at all, and we'll just bring a little movement and interest and maybe some unexpected colours. That's kind of how I'm planning it. Just a little bit of detail, or say suggestion of detail, makes our brains think that there's more going on than potentially there is. It's the next day, so everything's dry and I've removed any salt. And overnight, I've had an idea. And I do love it when the painting speaks to you and it becomes a dialogue between you and the painting. I started with an idea. This was going to be gold leaf background. And now what I like, because I like the floofy edges of the fox, and that's really hard to achieve with a gold leaf background, I'm actually going to paint this black with black ink to capture that sort of edge. And then I'm going to use gold ink within this as an embellishment. Never tried this before in my life. It may not work. In which case, if it doesn't work, I can always gold leaf on top of the black. So I can go back to plan A if plan B doesn't work. Or, of course, I can come up with plan C. So do not be afraid to change things. But meanwhile, I'm going to add colour to a fox. And I've got some colours in my palette. I have put out this, which is called Royal Brown. It's a rosa watercolour and it's a lovely rich deep brown. PBR 25. I have got some burnt sienna. That's a Michael Harding burnt sienna. And this little pot is actually phthalo blue. That was a sample of Jackman's phthalo blue. Mixed together, the royal brown and the phthalo blue make a very good grey, and that's all I'm going to use in my fox. So let's start with the eyes. Just using small, that's a size 10, probably closer to an 8 brush, and we put the colour on. I am not trying to paint within the lines. I'm not colouring in the ink. You'll notice that the ink isn't moving. If there are any lines like this from our original drawing, as I come over them, they will just melt away and disappear. Won't be frightened about leaving some white edges. Oh, sorry, white marks as well to give a bit more texture. So that's the, say, burnt sienna, and then I can start going back in and adding a little more and building up the tones. I'm also just going to make sure I save a little highlight in the eye, because there's always variation. Now this is the royal brown, which is a really lovely colour. If you have a chance to get hold of it, Rosa watercolours aren't expensive. They're artist quality. They're made in the Ukraine, and I think they're rather nice. So I'm working wet and wet with variation, looking at the direction of the fur as well. So if, say, I leave little white marks like that, I need them to be in the right direction. I'm going in punchy with the colours because watercolour does dry lighter and I don't want this to be insipid. But if that scares you, you can obviously build things up in layers a bit more. I can soften edges with a damp brush if I need to. I like putting colour on top of the ink as well, because even though the ink is really dark, it'll move and it will sort of show through a teeny weeny bit. So just putting some phthalo blue on top there, which I rather like. And this is a bit of the grey mix I was talking about. And it's quite fun to have a bit of grey as a different sort of grey from the grey of diluted ink. Just coming back in here, putting a little blue in those, in that highlight. a little blue in the markings around the eyes. So take your time. The ink is doing all the heavy lifting, and now you can just enjoy playtime with your watercolours. So if loosening up your watercolours is one of your ambitions and something you find quite hard, this can be a really good way of doing so, because you've got the structure underneath and you can just have a play. This is my reference photo, and because our printer hasn't got great ink in at the moment, the way it's printed out has actually brought in quite a bit of purple into here. Do you know, I rather like that. So I haven't got any purple in my palette, but let me grab, look, some Quin Magenta. That's a Jackman's one as well, and that's beautiful as it is. But if I pop in a little of my phthalo blue, look at the colour you get. And I might just put in a few drops, a few touches of this purple, wet into wet. I don't want to go over the top. And I think that might be quite fun. So I always really enjoy this part of the painting because, say, it is just playtime and letting the water flow and seeing where it takes you. Quite hope I can save these white marks. I think they're quite fun and they sort of echo there, so I'll make sure I put some over here too. If you're a bit scared of adding some of these strange colours, because we all know foxes don't really have blue noses, just start off very gently with a very pale version and sort of build up to something a little stronger. Marks and interesting colours. Right, let's do the other side in exactly the same way. And because I know I definitely want some of these hard white marks, I'm putting those in first, like this. As it starts to dry, you might want to come in with slightly creamier paint to put in some very definite marks. A more concentrated colour. And just because we did this side first, don't ignore it. Keep referring back. Is it working? How's it drying? Oh, that looks like it's got blue eyeshadow on. Maybe not. This piece is going to be framed because it's only on a thin-edged board, so I'm not bothering about the edges. If this was on a thick-edged canvas and you intended to display it unframed, then I personally would carry on the image around the sides, or leave it totally clean. What I wouldn't leave it is it sort of mucky, half clean, half dribbled. So do consider the sides, whatever you decide to do consider. And now just look at it overall, just work out if we need to sort of balance things up. I was thinking maybe a little bit of that purpley colour in a greyed down form over here would balance, because we've got quite a lot on the right side and less on the left. I think I need to just have some of that royal brown down here. This is where I need to put my big girl's knickers on, and I'm going to have a go at doing this dark background. I'm going to wet up to the edge and let it dry to just be damp, and that will depend on how damp the surface is. So better to take it easy. But can you see it will give us beautiful soft fuzzy edge? Because there's water on the surface, it won't be pure black. If I don't like the fact that it's not pure black, I can potentially do a second coat on it. But let's see what we think. If it goes too far, like here, I need to push it back if I can. I may need to re-wet the other areas before I come to do them, because I'm only getting a little spread here. Let me know what you think. Disaster or good idea? But if you always do the same thing, you will always get the same results, and that would be very boring. I don't want to lose the shape. Again, wetting that area. It's quite cold today in my studio, so I'm surprised this is drying so quickly. Trying to be very patient and let it spread before I add any more. I'm going to let this dry and then consider whether that was a hideous mistake or okay. The ink has dried and I think it's going in the right direction. So what I want to do is just drop in some of the colours from the fox itself into the background, because that background is patchy. I could either put another layer of ink on, or, as I say, just pop in some of those colours to tie the background in to the animal itself. And then we are on the homeward straight, I reckon. What I'm going to do from here is get the whiskers in, which is usually my favourite part of anything. And then a little gold. To do the whiskers, I'm going back to my pen. We just need to observe. Fox's whiskers are quite straight and they actually come back along the muzzle, so they will appear quite short from this sort of head-on view. You don't need to put every single one in. Let's be honest, the whiskers are the best bit. And we don't want to make them identical both sides either. Right, again, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but you can find out with me. I have put some of this beautiful gold mica ink. You can see it's well used. I need to shake it up. It's from Kuretake, a Japanese brand, and I put it in a needle bottle. I'm going to draw with this. Not any great plan of where I'm going. Definitely gold whiskers. They've got, I'm sure every fox would love to have gold whiskers. And why, you might say? Not about the gold whiskers, but why am I doing this? Because, do you know what? I can. I love black and gold as a combination. Gold in our society, well, in every society, I think, has the connotation of treasure and beauty, much as foxes can be a right pain if you're a chicken keeper. They are amazing animals. So I'm celebrating this fox. It is a bit scary doing this because it could be a total disaster. And do you know, surely if we are artists, we're always going to try something new. And if you try it without expectation that it's going to be perfect, that is the best thing. Because in the process, we may discover something new and wonderful. And even if we discover that actually this was a really poor idea, well, hey, I've discovered it rather than you, so that saves you a job. And if I discover that I rather like this, that's all good too. I think I want a longer one. Just putting a few dots. I'm being guided by some of the marks that are already on here. It's remarkably hard to be random. Now, what I've got to be super careful with is not to smudge any of these lines, because I like blobs, but God, I don't like smudges. And then all that remains to do is to seal it, and I'm going to seal that with some varnish. So I'll come back and show you that when it's dry, but this is going to take a few hours.